Mr. Geary, you have a quorum, and it is 4:30. We're live on YouTube. So you have Chris George, Leslie Allen, and Bob Powell here from your board.
All right. We have anybody else supposed to be in attendance from the board or not? Or is this it?
Doug's supposed to be here.
Doug was supposed to be here.
Okay. All right, we'll have to bear with me a little bit trying to see everything on the computer and getting things to condense in different modes. So, all right, I guess we're ready to start.
Can you hear us?
All right.
I'm good.
All right, so hopefully I have everybody. All right, my name is Michael Geary, as chairman. I call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic District Commission to order this 25th day of March 2021. There is a quorum present. The roster of the staff to the commission, of the commission members, and the technical posts that they fill in accordance with the requirements of the Hagerstown zoning ordinance are on file with the city of Hagerstown, are available on request of any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. All decisions rendered are based on the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines as adopted by the city of Hagerstown. Each decision is made on a case-by-case basis and is not intended to be precedent setting. If you have any electronic devices, other than what I guess computers that you're using, please make sure they've been silenced or we are recording this meeting via YouTube. So let's keep that in consideration. We do have two types of cases right now, consent agenda and design review. For consent agenda, I will ask anybody in our audience if they have any issues with those particular cases. If not, then I'll ask commission members if they have any issues with any of the consent agenda items. If there are no issues, then we will blanket approve those particular cases and those applicants will be free to leave the meeting. For design reviews, when your case is called, please join with the commission. For the record, please state your name and address. There will be a brief synopsis of your application from the staff consultant. After that, the floor will then be turned over to the applicant for any further elaboration. After that, the floor will then be open for discussion by the commission members prior to rendering a decision on that particular application. First up, we have approval of the minutes from March 11th, 2021. Commission members, any changes, revisions, corrections? If so, please so state. Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion for adoption.
Move to approve.
All right, Leslie, second. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes from March 11th, 2021, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, any opposed? Motion carries. All right, first up, consent agenda item HDC 2021-15 for 43 South Potomac Street, the Authentic Community Theater for signage. I take it nobody in our audience would be speaking out against that particular application.
Mr. Chairman, also earlier today, we sent you all out a revised agenda with one item added to the agenda that was 170 West Washington. It's a very routine case. They're reopening a couple of previously closed window openings and putting wood windows in them and then building a low, very simple handicap ramp off the back of the building. I don't know, as a matter of policy, we don't add at the staff level things that got added to the agenda at the last minute onto consent, but it's a very routine case. So if you are interested in, staff would have no objection if you moved 170 West Washington to consent. But that's your call.
All right, committee members or commission members?
I have no objections to adjusting the consent agenda to add that case.
I have no problem with it.
All right, we'll entertain a motion to move that particular case, and which is it's HDC case 2021-17. We'll entertain a motion to move that one to consent agenda.
I so move.
Or a second?
Second.
All right. Any further
I'll-
discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to move HDC case 2021-17 to consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Doug, aye.
All right, any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So with the HDC, with consent agenda, that particular application being added to that, I take it nobody in our audience has any particular problems with that case either. Commission members?
No.
Any comments on these particular consent agenda items?
Mr. Chairman, if you could, for all votes, if you could do roll call so we can keep track and understand who's saying aye, since we can't see them.
All right. At this point then, commission members, if there's no comments, we'll entertain a motion for adoption.
I'll do a motion. Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the material submitted in cases number HDC 2021-15 and 2021-17 and their associated staff reports and recommendations, and I reviewed the properties in question. Staff reports recommend approval of these applications as consistent with the applicable standards adopted by this commission, and no one has appeared at this meeting with concerns about, issues with, or objections to these applications. Therefore, I move that this commission adopt the staff evaluations and recommendations in these cases as its own and grant certificates of appropriateness to the applicants for cases number HDC 2021-15 and HDC 2021-17.
Is there a second?
Doug, I second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none. At this point, we'll take a vote via roll call. Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
All right, Ms. Allen?
I
Mr. George?
Aye.
Mr. Powell?
Aye.
All right. Any objections? I believe everybody answered, so the motion carries. Those applicants will be free to go. At this time, we appreciate your attendance.
Mr. Grace and also Authentic Community Theater, you are done. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Next up would be design reviews. I would like the commission to entertain, I think two of our cases are going to be fairly lengthy. I'd like to, I think the one case HDC 2021-16 should be fairly short in the interest of time that we don't tie folks up for any longer than necessary. If everybody's in agreement, I'd like to move that one to the top of the design review.
Fine with me.
Doug, I'm fine.
All right. HDC case then 2021-16 for 1020 Oak Hill Avenue for Mr. Harmon with a patio. Mr. Harmon, if you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. It's Timothy Harmon, and it's 1020 Oak Hill Avenue, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742.
All right, thank you.
Can
Sure.
we show you on the screen as being with us twice? We have a Tim Harmon. And
Yeah, one of them I believe is my wife.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, she's and we're in separate areas and we're
Hi.
trying to,
I wasn't
trying to
trying,
all be there at the same time.
okay, just wanted to check.
Divide and conquer with 2 children.
There you go. Okay, this is application number HDC 2021-16. The applicant is Timothy S. Harmon. Property is located at 1020 Oak Hill Avenue. This is in the Oak Hill Historic District. It's a key resource. The building contributes to the character of the district, but is not likely to qualify for a National Register listing individually. Photograph of the property is shown on page 1 of your staff report. This is a corner lot, by the way. The side street is Irvin Avenue, I believe. Design guidelines are pages 49 to 52 of the residential guidelines. Description of work and plans. The applicant proposes to remove an existing wooden deck on the rear of the historic portion of the house and a wooden stoop with stairs from the 1990s rear addition, and construct a raised 23 by 31 masonry patio with steps where the deck was located, including a 5-foot by 5-foot fire pit. 2, rebuild the stoop on the 1990s addition with stairs to the new patio using PVC railing systems. 3, obtain approval of a pool deck, 22 by 24 that will surround an in-ground pool. The pool design review application to be submitted later. 4, remove existing concrete pad adjacent to the rear alley. And 5, remove small retaining wall in future pool location, as well as remove paved basketball court and then regrade and sod this area. Recommendation is approval. There's an existing ornamental fence, retaining wall, and topography that mostly mask the improvements. The patio being uphill and flat to the ground will have minimal impact and be barely noticeable from the street. And the pool, which will be the actual pool, the hole in the ground, which will be submitted later, will be in the ground. Staff notes that there are several options that are submitted regarding materials, so the commission will need to discuss with the applicant which materials are preferred. Staff also notes that the railing on the replacement stoop is not one typically used for improvements visible from public ways. Staff will discuss this with the applicant and attempt to have the issue resolved before your meeting. And unfortunately, due to other work demands here in our office in the last few days, I was not unable to do that. So this is a little bit, Mr. Harmon was sent the staff report, but this particular item saying I was going to reach out to him did not occur. That's all I have. Well, actually, let me go over something. Just want to summarize the exhibits. Mr. Harmon provided an air photo of the site showing how the pool deck and patio would be and where the pool will be located in relationship to the rest of the property. A drawing as well was submitted. He also provided elevations or cross sections of the small retaining wall sections that would be used to create the patio, create a level effect, and the steps up to the house. There is a photograph showing the white PVC with black metal, looks like black metal balusters in the railing. And again, this is not something that is typically seen in the historic district. That's this photograph right here. And then there is a photograph of the existing stoop off the more modern edition. Photograph of the wooden deck that's going to be removed. And then manufacturer's literature on various types of masonry units for the patio and the fire pit. And again, that's going to be something that you all will need to discuss with Mr. Harmon. That's all I have.
Sorry. All right. Mr. Harmon, anything to add to that?
No, I really don't have anything to add. I would just wait to hear what your advice would be for us to move forward. I don't really know a lot of the options for what the stairs should look like. And the addition on the back is a newer addition in the house. I think it was done in the early 90s. The steps kind of reflect that. We were just trying to dress it up a bit. And I don't really feel like once the screening with the the landscaping and some additions of some shrubs and bushes, you really won't see any of that from the side street from Irvin, and none of that will be visible from the front of the house.
Commission members.
My only comment is the ivy has been removed from the wall along West Urban.
This is Doug. I'm new to the house and not. This is Doug. I was going to comment. I'm familiar with the property and I looked at this package and the property certainly won't negatively impact the neighborhood. My only concern would be the railing and for it not to be fiberglass. Staff notes that it is visible, and I know it would be visible. So, Mr. Harmon, that would be my concern: is use historic materials for things like the railings that it could be seen.
Okay. Do you have a suggestion for what should be there?
Typically, most of the railings are wood. In that regard, I would see basically it's just the railing on the one set of steps there toward the back of that house, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Harmon, one thing that staff level I wasn't quite clear on is the steps from that stoop where these railings are going to be. Are they going to go straight out into the yard like the current stoop does, or do you come out of the door and make a left and go down to your patio? I understood it was the latter.
Yes.
Yes.
It's going to go to the left, like you said.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And
Any
Mr. Harmon, is there an objection to wood, iron, as far as the railing? It's going to be highly visible. Is there an issue with that with you?
Not sure I heard your question clearly. Could you restate that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Maybe it's. I think my connection's unstable. I was just asking Mr. Harmon if he was did he object to iron, wood, a material more in line with the historical house than what was represented, which was fiberglass.
No, I don't have an objection to that at all.
And you would be willing to amend the application
Right.
for that then, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. Commission members, any question in regards to the materials on the patio? In the application, there was a number of different options.
Yeah, Leslie, I was just reviewing the materials for the patio stone. And I guess I would agree with Mr. Carroll about trying to find a comparable masonry product, but I don't know how that would be effective for a pool on a historic property lot. I mean, maybe you could weigh in, Mr. Gare, on that. Is it just to match and make it reflect that, but it's still an addition? I was just unsure which way to review this.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the materials?
Staff has a couple of suggestions. If you look at the cover of your staff report, the front porch has a simple square picket railing. Do something, it would have to be taller to be building code, but something very similar to what you see on the front porch. Or an alternative is, since there's a black metal vertical ornamental fence surrounding the property, something like that in black would tend to blend into the background a bit. If you're looking at it from the street, if you're looking at it from the alley straight on, it would kind of stand out because it would be black on top of the white siding of the house. But if you're looking at it from Urban Avenue and looking south across the back of the property, it would tend to blend in with the backyards of the buildings behind it. So staff would suggest one of those two options, either just a simple square picket wood fence or railing, or a simple wider spaced black metal fence.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, this is Doug.
Okay. As far as the material for the patio, I mean, it's fairly limited view to that. I don't have an objection to any one. Is there a preference from the applicant as far as which direction you're heading?
I don't believe, I think that those were the two choices that we had sort of narrowed things down to. I don't know, but I might have to get my wife to weigh in on one versus the other. But we were thinking that either of those two, maybe the two of those combined, and one of the two of those, the fire pit examples would be something we were thinking of.
So we were thinking the travertina going around the pool and then going around the fire pit. And then there's another paver that looks sort of like wood, and I think it's called the borealis. And so that's what we were going to have the main patio done, so that it sort of blends together, but then is separate, so that the travertina was what was suggested because it's better around the pool deck because it's not slippery and it's smooth.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Chairman. I don't think any of those I think they're not really going to be seen regardless. So I think either of those works for me.
Okay.
Commission members, any issues with the options presented?
I have none.
Okay.
I think point out to make sure that you're clear on what you're approving in your motion. Are you going to ask them to pick one of each for these sections? Or are you just going to leave an approval that allows them each of those options, which you could do as well? Just be clear on what you're making in your motion, just so we're clear.
All right. If there's no other objections, any other questions in regard to any of the materials?
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
I'm hoping that the applicant could possibly narrow down to fewer options. We always hope that the selection is, well chosen if it's a too open, but even if we can't completely see it, I would hope that they would have compatible pieces within their design. It sounds like they would, but in order to be clear, I think I agree with Steve about being a little more specific. There's a lot of options here that they're liking, and maybe they could just pick one that they want, and we could put that in.
Well, what we wanted to do is the travertina around the pool. That was the paver that we wanted to do around the pool, and around the fireplace. But then we wanted to do the borealis, which is slightly different, and it looks like wood, but it would all blend together around the main patio off of the house because it's darker and it's smaller, and we felt it would blend in better with the integrity of the house. And then it would go into the travertina, and that would be what went around just the pool. So then there would be, you know, like walls that would blend everything together.
That means you would be looking at the Travertina fire pit option as your first choice.
For the pool and the fire pit option, yes.
Okay. I would recommend our motion that we call those out.
All right. Does that take care of most of the material selections then, or am I missing something else? Scrolling back through here. Okay. Anything else that we need to include in our motion?
Cap wall option. Are we talking Travertina on that as well?
I didn't hear the first part.
The cap wall on the steps are on the, I guess, different elevation changes. Is that going to be the travertine also?
I think so. I'm driving, so I don't have the sketch in front of me but the wall that's around the fire pit, that would all be the travertina.
Yeah,
I was just-
I think our contractor is on here as well.
Okay.
Ed might have it in front of him and could speak to that.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't want to, I guess, speak because it was mostly them, but yeah, our plan is to do the fire pit pretty much on the page that was submitted is option number 2. It says fire pit, so you can see the travertina block or the retaining wall block, and then the cap, so that would be matching there. And then I think it was labeled fire pit option number 2. I don't know if you guys can see it on your page. So that will have the wall, and then you can see the cap that is matching basically for fire pit, and then also for the retaining sitting wall around the patio will be the same material.
Great, thank you. All right, commission members, think we've got everything we need to move forward with a motion.
And staff just asked for a quick explanation. The fire pit option 1, fire pit option 2, they're going with option what?
Fire pit's option 2.
Option 2, yes. So the picture submitted was, if you look at the label, it would be fire pit option 2. Yes, sir.
All right, and then patio stone options 1, 2, and 3.
Option
The
number
patio, for the patio itself will be option number 2, and then for the pool deck area will be patio stone option number 1. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and sitting wall or cap and wall, we have option 1, option 2, option 3.
I think didn't submit one. It basically will be the matching. I think it's adequate that is all the same. So we'll use the fire pit option wall for the entire project if that's okay.
And which cap option are you looking at?
Yet again, to be the travertina raw cap.
Same as the fire pit.
Exactly.
Okay, so this last part of the package where it says cap and wall options 1, 2, and 3, we're not dealing with any of that.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I got it now. Thank you.
Yep.
commission members, if we're ready to entertain a motion.
One more question, if I may.
Okay.
On the deck steps and landing, should we resubmit a new application for review before we proceed with the work, or should we just take your recommendations and move forward with it?
Which have you all decided which of those two routes you might be preferring?
I really think I think probably metal. I think, this is probably more for Mr. and Mrs. Harman to answer, but which is,
Yes. The metal is good with me.
Would the commission be okay with staff review of the railing prior to building permits so they don't have to come back?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Doug, yes, I'm fine with it.
Okay, just find a railing system that's similar to the fence that goes around your property.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll review it when you come. If you shoot a PDF of it to me by email, and we'll incorporate it into your building permit file.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
That way you don't have to come back to this board over that one item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, in the motion, commission members, please make sure that the railing would still be reviewed by staff. All right, I think we've got everything at this point, or it sounds like everybody's ready to move this application forward. We'll entertain a motion.
This is Doug. I'll defer to somebody who kept up with all that. I'm struggling. Did any other members get that?
Anybody got a motion here?
Like I said, we went from the different materials and the stonework to the options. As I'm appreciating it here, they're using all of the travertine raw and then the Borealis stone, right? And then the railing is going to be consistent with the design of the house, and it's going to be iron, and the staff's going to review it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Chairman, I can try this. Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the material submitted in case number 2021-16 and its associated staff report and recommendations, and I view the property in question. The staff report recommends approval of this application is consistent with applicable standards adopted by this commission, with specific requirements that travertina and Borealis stone is used as represented, and that the railing consists of iron consistent with design on the home, and it will be reviewed by staff. And in addition, no one has appeared at this hearing with concerns about issues with or objections to this application. Therefore, I move that this commission adopt the staff evaluation and recommendations in this case as its own and grant a certificates of appropriateness to the applicant for case number 2021-16.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
Staff would suggest that it be tweaked a little bit where it's black metal, not necessarily iron. It could be aluminum product or something like that.
All right, we good with that amendment?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
I'm okay with it.
So it's metal.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll entertain yay or nay as we go through roll call for approval of the motion. First up, Mr. Carroll.
Yay.
Ms. Allen.
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yay.
And Mr. Powell.
Yes.
All right, the Yeas have it, motion carries. Appreciate everybody's time on that. And
All right.
Mr.
Thank you
Harmon?
very much. Yes, thank you again.
All right.
Thank
have a
you.
good day.
Thank you, Harmon.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda, HDC case 2021-14 for 1416 East Antietam Street for 1416 and 24 East Antietam LLC for demolition.
Okay, I believe we have a whole committee here from Bowman Development. If you could identify yourselves real quick.
Daniel Hoffman, Bowman Development.
Jeff Tedrick, Bowman Development, 10228 Governor Lane Boulevard, Suite 3002, Williamsport, Maryland, 21795.
Tim Keller, Bowman Development.
Okay. And it's just the three of you on that one feed, correct? Nobody else is feeding in?
That is correct.
Okay. This is HDC case 2021-14. The applicant is 1416 and 24 East Antietam LLC. The property is located at 14 to 16 East Antietam. This is a downtown historic district. The building is a B resource. It contributes to the character of the district, but is not likely to qualify for National Register listing individually. Photograph of the property from 2014 is shown on page 1 of your staff report. The design guidelines, it's chapter 4 and appendix F. Site description, the property contains 2 buildings. The building subject to the proposed demolition is a circa 1890 building that appears to have been constructed as a 2-family dwelling in the Second Empire style and modified later for apartment use containing 5 units. It is minimally modified from its historic configuration on the exterior, partially enclosed windows, porch construction, etc. There's a second building on the property abutting the alley, which appears to be of a vernacular or federal design, and per available city maps appears to date from about the 1870s or the early 1880s. There's no request at this time to demolish the second building. So this is strictly for the Second Empire building. The description of work, the applicant seeks a certificate of hardship for the proposed demolition of the building. Fill the basement with shale and stabilize as a temporary condition until they decide how to further redevelop the site. Per the adopted rules for a certificate of hardship, as well as section T4 of the zoning ordinance, the zoning administrator may advance the application to this level without requiring the applicant to first attempt to obtain a certificate of appropriateness when he or she determines that the HDC and the reasonable application of its standards and guidelines will likely be required to reject the application. So I'm thinking it was such a situation here where it served no purpose to have them just apply for a certificate of appropriateness, and we're now in the process of a certificate of hardship. So that's what I directed them to do. In your staff report, you have the legal standards for a certificate of hardship. I'm not going to read all of that verbatim into the record. I'll enter it in by reference, but there's 3 items of which I provided some commentary on them. Information provided, the applicant has provided a pretty extensive package of materials, reporting on the condition of the property, assessed values, reports from the insurance adjuster. There was a fire in the building a while back, and those numbers are summarized in the staff report. Staff recommendation: demolition of any contributing resource is inconsistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance, general preservation principles, and the design guidelines. However, provisions are written into the code to address certain circumstances under which demolition is permissible. The data provided shows that there appears to be insurance funding in place to finance much of the rehabilitation cost, and rents and occupancy would improve after renovation. Addressing or contemplating potential improvements with the adjacent property to justify the demolition at least is premature, as no specific plans are proposed. Staff forwards the submitted materials for your consideration. Staff recommends that if the request is approved, a time limit on the use of shale stabilization of the site be imposed, for the site to be topsoiled and seeded if plans for reuse of the site are not implemented by a specific date. Stone stabilization should not be an infinite condition in the city center area or in the historic district. Your design guiding documents, you have your downtown historic district design guidelines, chapter 4 and appendix F. Undue financial review procedures, your zoning ordinance, and site treatment. Secretary Interior standards apply here are 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we included as attachments to your staff report, the document that we have for public use for undue financial hardship submittal requirements that are appended to the report. And that's all I have.
All right, do our applicants have anything they would like to add?
You had mentioned one fire. We actually have had 2 fires in the facility. So it's we've been dealing with trespassers, break-ins, stolen heating pipes. And also wanted to note we have recommendations from the deputy fire marshal and fire marshal and fire chief recommending or supporting the demolition. And that's at the end of the report.
Can you give us some background on what you're ultimately looking at for this particular property? Obviously, we're used to having some information coming in with a demolition as to what the projected use of the property would be. We're not looking to just open up holes in our streetscape per se. So if you could give us some background and some likely timeframes, that would be, so I think, some good information for the commission members.
Mr. Chairman, also, Debbie's taking minutes of the meeting, and we're all sitting here on televisions, and we all have masks on, so it's hard for her with multiple people on one screen to transcribe what they're saying because she doesn't recognize the voices. So folks from Bowman, if you could, when you speak, if you could identify yourself so she can have it for the record.
Who's the last person who spoke? Was that Mr. Hoffman that spoke?
Right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, that's all I had.
Question.
Well, right now, I mean, there's been discussions of possibly that area being used as, something that would enhance adjacent properties, such as the Masonic Temple building, maybe some sort of outdoor space. Nothing really specific at this point. There's been discussions of possibly a parking garage in the future by the city, but I know that's kind of been, it hasn't really progressed that much right now with the pandemic the last year. Other than that, is there any other things that you want to introduce me?
I'd like to introduce Rob Ferry, who just joined us here. Rob handles marketing and some of the downtown development ideas that we've been pursuing to this point. Maybe Rob can jump in here and give a little bit better idea of what the vision would be ultimately for that property.
Hello, I'm Rob Ferry with Bowman Development. So if you all know, I just had to back up a little bit. That Don Bowman's invested in pretty much trying to do his best to revitalize the downtown area. And I don't have to, unless you want me to, tell you what his projects have been. So when we look at East Antietam Street, we see a possible opportunities that we're trying to explore and see what happens. So he would like to develop that area as soon as it really becomes economically viable. Some of the options could be those properties face the back of the Masonic. So we've just completed phase 1 of the renovation of the Masonic Temple, with one of the tenants being the Methersmith distillery. And we've revitalized that building, incorporating the aspects of the Masonic Temple. We're hoping to get other retail and office users in there. I think so far we've probably spent close to $2.5 million there. The back of the temple is a auditorium space that has possibilities of being used. And this area could provide access to that building. So, but we don't have anything firm now, but you know, that's a possibility that we're could explore. This is just another thought of Mr. Bowman's, but the possibility is that we could demolish the back part of the Masonic. It was built at a later date, if I'm correct, and expand the parking deck out the East Antietam Street. So that's an option. The third option is we would like to build residential property when the downtown can support rents that would make such a building a reasonable investment. So that's another option. Number 4, you never know what comes up. And if something comes up that will help the downtown and be economical viable, we'll be prepared to do that. So this is just setting the scene for all those possible uses or something else that we don't imagine right now. But it'll get rid of a building that is in really bad shape and it doesn't make sense to revitalize. Not a precise answer, but you know, we're a development company and we're always looking for opportunities.
All right. Commission members, other questions?
I have, in reviewing the materials, I just want to check something. The gentleman mentioned that the fire chief was supporting the demolition, but the documents I have don't show that. They just show that there was combustible material in the building back in September that they recommended removal of. I didn't see that endorsement there.
That was a correspondence that I had added and sent to the commission later. It was dated October 9th, 2020, an email.
Yeah, I see that. It just says that I talked to the fire chief again and about assisting support, but it seems, it's unclear.
Oh, well, they just said that they talked with the fire chief again today about assisting with supporting our request to demo the East Antietam property.
Okay, I just thought that was uncommittal. It just said they talked to him. It didn't show that they agreed to it. I just want to clarify that point.
I believe that Chief Steve Lohr, if you want, we can get a firmer commitment or letter from him if you need it.
Well, was the commitment to demo it because of a particular reason? That's what I'm searching for here. It just showed that there was combustible materials back in September. There's nothing to show that you mentioned 2 fires. There is nothing that shows that the materials were removed. But if he had his rationale as to why he thought the building should be demoed would be helpful.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I can't speak for him. We just had him on another issue here a couple of days ago, and he repeated his support.
Okay.
But I can't speak for his support. I just know that these vacant buildings are fire hazards.
May I ask one other question? Mr. Bachmiller, has this house ever been before the board before for any kind of contemplation? I don't recall it.
For a demolition,
or anything?
I think we have had a couple of applications in the past for minor work from a previous owner. Things associated with the back porches, repairs, things like that. Maybe enclosing a stairway to the second floor, I think might have been discussed at one point. But minor stuff and not for a demolition.
When was the property purchased? When did Bowman acquire the property? Is it
2019 or?
February 2018 is on page 3.
okay? I looked over that. All right. So the fire had occurred. The fires, I guess, have been more recent, or that they had occurred before the property was purchased.
There was a pretty major fire at the top floor in 2019 October, and then there was another fire in the spring, I believe, of 2020. And that was due to a break-in and just vandalizing.
Commission members, other questions for our applicants?
Would there be any value for the commission to tour the building?
You say that again, this is Doug. I didn't get that.
Would there be any value to the commission touring the building if the applicant is willing to let y'all in?
Hey, this is Doug. I wouldn't object to that because I was going to speak. I'm struggling a little bit with demolishing this building. I know it's got issues, but it's also got some history, and it certainly fixed up to contribute to the historical, this historical part of the city. But I'm struggling without a real concrete plan of what would be done with the space if the demolition occurred. It'd be nice to have really specifics if it's part of the Masonic Temple redevelopment. That would be good, because as I'm appreciating this application, it's specific to an undue financial hardship, and I'm not seeing that as actually the reason for doing this. It appears to me that it's just the demolition would be just to remove it for future use of that site. I'm not sure that meets the standards, but I welcome to be corrected on that. But yes, I think in light of the fact that I'm struggling a little bit, I'm not opposed to looking at the interior.
I agree.
Yeah, I would have no problem in viewing the building if they would be agreeable to that. I struggle too a little bit with trying to balance, obviously, a vacant building being an issue in downtown Hagerstown. I'm not saying it can or can't be fixed up. Obviously, the commission, we take our job, seriously. Not that we're here to decide what profit margin should or shouldn't be. From our standpoint, we're only looking at, if it's a break-even type scenario, it could be a profitable project. Obviously, from a development side, you're looking at that very, very differently. We understand that. We just hate to see buildings come down for just because we want to take buildings down. If there is a very legitimate reason, for the public good, that's all well and fine. I think most of our commission, would not stand in the way of something like that. But I don't know that there's any real definite or concrete plans. And we understand it's, you're very early in your development strategy for that particular piece of the, or that parcel at this particular time.
Well, for sure, we have no issue. Whatever we can do to help you guys make a decision we're very willing to do. We appreciate you taking a look and your interest, and by all means, we'll make arrangements to show you the property by all means. Yeah, and it's just tough to make a decision at this point in time. Talk about financials. So we've spent $2.5 million, and we'll probably need to spend another at least $1 million on the Masonic. And right now we have only one tenant. So it's tough to make future plans when our current projects are suffering. So that's kind of the position we're in, and we kind of hate to leave that building the way it is, but I mean, that's always an option. Even just by the way, even a demolition costs money. It's an investment.
Sir, this is Doug. I certainly appreciate that. And you're doing a great job with the Masonic Temple, obviously. Yeah, the only thing is once this is gone, it's gone. So I would be more comfortable taking a little bit more time, seeing the property, and just putting a little bit more effort into making this assessment.
Okay.
Well, our schedule is probably more flexible than yours collectively. So I think we'll look to you to provide some recommended times that you can gather the committee, and then we'll just work to accommodate that visit. Make the building. We'll have to get some of the doors unsecured. We've done everything that we can to secure the building to prevent future vandalism or homeless people trying to find shelter in inclement weather. Give us some heads up on dates that will work. We'll get the building opened up, make it accessible, and we'll need some lights to make it safe for everybody to get through. There are some unsafe areas of the building because of the fires that we've had.
Yeah.
We appreciate.
And then, and actually, if you have time, Jeff, I'm committing you. We'll take you through the Masonic as well.
That would be great.
And show you the back portion of the Masonic where the theater is. The theater is rather limited on access because of the way we've had to accommodate the current tenants in the Masonic Lodge. So again, it doesn't provide a concrete project moving forward, but it'll help you envision what we're looking for as potential for making that rear theater space more marketable as we try to move forward with some tenant prospects that have shown interest.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that would be great. What we would need to do, we'll get that scheduled. If we table the, I guess, application at this particular point, and then we can revisit that. We don't have to keep coming back, meeting after meeting, but hopefully we can get a schedule set up and then we can get further consideration on the application.
I'd like to ask you gentlemen something. Just out of curiosity, why did you not include the second building? I mean, in light of the fact that it would obviously be an impediment to doing something with the Masonic Temple, why didn't you not include that? Or are you just trying to take it one bite at a time?
Yeah, that's it. The other building is structurally sound. We do have tenants in there. I think we have it fully occupied or not. We have a fair bit of turnover, but there's no, I mean, you're all having a hard enough time justifying this vacant burnout building. We wouldn't want to approach you on a building that's still usable at this point in time. If we have a project that's exciting enough that entails asking you to look at this building, we will do, but we're only asking for what we need or what we think is the best.
Yeah, from the staff standpoint, the applicant is kind of between a rock and a hard place in a way, because on one hand, the general principle of historic preservation is you don't tear down a historic resource unless absolutely necessary. And you're going to have to weigh that in the materials that they've provided you to justify the demolition. But on the other hand, Hagerstown's Historic District Commission is actually one of the most accommodating in the state. We actually have a unique tool where if there's enough economic benefit, called the major economic development opportunity provision, where it actually justifies the economic redevelopment aspect outweighing the historic preservation. We've used it one time before for a major project downtown, but they're not to the point of proposing anything for that would justify tearing down a perfectly serviceable building. So they're kind of in between the two in a way.
This is Doug. I agree with you, and that's why I had mentioned earlier. Was this part of a major improvement program? Was it associated with the Masonic Temple? So yeah, I read it in detail. So I appreciate that, and it certainly makes sense. So yeah, I just think I think the tour would help a lot. My conscience looking at demolishing this building. So I'm available whenever, Mr. Garrett.
Yeah, count me in for the tour too. I'm excited to see it.
Chris, what's your schedule like? You're probably the least flexible of everybody.
I'm available usually afternoons, all weekdays, as well as all day on Tuesday in the mornings too.
Okay. Probably look to set something up midweek next week, maybe.
Doug, that would work for
I'll
me.
send an email around for availability tomorrow.
Good deal.
And that would be great. All right. So at this time, so at this time, I guess with discussion we've had, I guess we need to table the discussion until a later meeting with the applicant's approval, obviously.
I think we're in total agreement with that, Mike.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, commission members, somebody would like to make a motion to table the discussion for this particular application at this time.
Motion to table.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, so we have a motion on the table to table the discussion for this application being HDC 2020-14 until after our field visit, and then which time we will reconvene. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye via the roll call. Mr. Carroll.
Aye.
Ms. Allen.
Aye.
Mr. George.
Aye.
And Mr. Powell.
Aye.
All right, as far as that the yeas have it, so the motion carries. We appreciate your time, folks. And we'll look forward to seeing you there on site at some point, hopefully end of the week.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And commission members, remember, if you're all there at one time where there's enough of you to form a quorum, that what you're going to need to do is not discuss details while you're there. Take your tour, make your observations. But if you're going to sit there and talk about the pluses and minuses, that needs to be on there. So just
I'll cook it. I'll do it.
okay.
All right, thank you. All right, guys, we appreciate your time. We'll move on to our next case. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next case up is HDC 2021-11 for 102 South Prospect Street. Ms. Delat asking us to reconsider the use of the vinyl siding on the proposed garage.
This is an amended application, HDC 2020-11. Properties at 102 South Prospect Street, the Prospect Street Historic District. Resources in that district are not rated, but this building is a contributing resource to the district. Photographs are on page 1 of your staff report. Just to give you about a little bit of background, the last meeting, this body approved a construction of a new garage in the rear yard area. The approval was subject to an amendment made by the applicant at the request of the commission that they have changed the siding material from vinyl siding to fiber cement siding, which they did do, and the motion was approved. So now what we have is the applicant is returning to the commission, asking to amend the approval to deal with to do the vinyl siding. After all, staff recommendation Staff cannot recommend approval of this change for the same reasons cited in the previous report. Staff enters the following 2 points into the record as developments from the previous hearing. It was stated that the garage would be about 200 feet from the rear of the house. Based on measurements made from satellite photos on the internet, the distance actually is about 100 feet. It's neither here nor there, but we just want to make sure that everybody was clear what the actual distance is. Also, it was argued that there are buildings in the immediate vicinity that have vinyl or aluminum siding. This is correct. However, it needs to be noted that the modern siding on those buildings had that siding added before the HDC's authority to regulate changes was created. The purposes of the process and the guidelines are to develop a historic district that is more in keeping with the historic character over time as applications for changes to properties come forward. If the owners of these buildings came forward with plans for significant exterior rehabilitation of these buildings, the guidelines would recommend uncovering, repairing, and painting the historic siding if possible. That's all I have.
Mr. Latt, do you have anything to add?
I do. I'd like to say, first of all, good afternoon. My husband is here with me this afternoon. His name is Ruhl, R-U-H-L, same last name, same address for the record. What I'd like. Is that Ms. Calhoun? Can you hear me?
Very, very slightly.
Ruhl, R-U-H-L.
Okay, thank you.
Same last name, same address.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is first respond to Mr. Bachelor's comments, and then I'm going to have a few questions for you. Pick up a few minutes of your time. Okay. Yes, it is less than 200 feet from the back of the house. But our goal is to protect the view from the historic district. The view from the street is indeed nearly 200 feet. Additionally, the existing siding in the neighborhood, yes, it has been existing for some time. However, the neighborhood has not in any way been negatively impacted by it. Okay. I'd like to ask you a few questions, and then I'm going to take up about 5 minutes of your time. So, first question. Last week, it appeared that Mr. Powell and Mr. Bachmiller were the only ones familiar with the property and the surrounding area. I'd like to know if anyone else on the committee has paid a visit to this property and viewed the property and surrounding area since our last meeting.
My wife and I have driven by the property and drove down the alley.
Who's speaking, please?
Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Anyone else?
Yes, I have been there by that property many times, including this today.
Okay, good. Mr. Powell, Mr. George. Okay, not George, but Gera. Okay, that's good, because when I verify compliance in my professional career, I make sure that I'm familiar with the subject property and the surrounding area. And I was kind of disappointed last week in wondering how you expect to make a reasonable determination when you had clearly not familiar with the subject property or the surrounding area. So I appreciate the two of you taking the time to go out there. I really do appreciate that. Okay, next question. I understand that these hearings are open to the public. I did receive access to the information related to my application. I see that the hearings are live streamed. However, I don't see an opportunity for public input. Can you please explain how the general public can both attend and participate in these online hearings, and how do they know?
You want me as staff to try to approach that?
Yes, if you could, because you guys handle the advertisement and the publication of the information.
We're not required to advertise the public meetings. However, the agendas are posted on the city's website. And information is presented that lets people know that where it can be seen. I'm sorry.
The documents
The documents for the applications are posted online. If somebody has a concern that the agenda being on the online will generate their interest, and they can call us at staff and ask us questions. Typically, almost never does the public come to one of these meetings when they hear about a hearing. In my 18 years here in the city, I think maybe one application may have generated some neighborhood interest coming out, and that one I can't even remember what it might be, and it might not even exist. I might be making that up in my head.
Oh, would that be my house when I wanted to sit around for my trash and my neighbor complained, the one that put their trash on the other neighbor's property because they didn't want it on theirs? So the thing
That might be it. Now that I think about it, yours might be the only one that I think we have ever had public interest in.
But
and you were looking to build a shed in your front yard right next to your neighbor's house, if I remember correctly.
I can tell you that I've had personally sat in on several meetings.
All right, well, let me rephrase that because I just can't remember any off the top of my head. It's exceptionally rare that members of the public, third parties, attend these meetings that have concerns with applications.
Okay.
It's extremely rare. We'll leave it at that.
I understand that, but we do have a highly active, involved and vocal neighborhood group. Have you received any objections from the community regarding this application?
No.
No?
We have not received any communication from any neighbors that I'm aware of or anybody in the community that has any concerns with or support for this application.
Okay, thank you. So it's only the commission members that oppose.
Beg your pardon?
I said it's only some of the commission members that oppose the application as submitted. Is that correct? There's no one else that opposed the vinyl, is what I'm asking.
I mean, I'm confused about this line of question that you have. I suppose there would be people out there who are uninformed about the property, but what are you trying to do here?
What I'm trying to do is understand whether or not the people that live in this community, that work in this community, have objections to the proposed use of vinyl for this project. And
frankly, that doesn't really matter because we have to conform to our guidelines. And our guidelines clearly say that any vinyl siding in an area that's visible but in the public way is not permitted. And that's what we're basing our decision on. It's in black and white in the design.
Say that
unfortunately, your property is very visible, not only from Prospect Street, but from West Antietam Street and also from Holborn Avenue at this point. And I consider Holborn Avenue an alley, but even when I'm on Google, that's one of the few alleys that even you can go down the alley on Google Earth at this particular point, as opposed to any other alley in the city of Hagerstown. So that's even from that side, it is on the visible from the public way. And that's where the issue is. We don't have an issue per se personally, whether you want vinyl siding or there. It's not permitted in our guidelines. Okay. And because it is in a very visible position, we can't approve that. Now, had your house been further down the block where, from the alley, you couldn't see it, we probably wouldn't have any issue with that particular application. But the fact is, It's in a very visible location coming up West Antietam, as well as from Prospect from the dry bridge. It's a very visible area for the vinyl siding. So therefore, our guidelines say we cannot approve it.
Okay. So you're,
I looked through everything, and the only material change that I've seen is that it's actually visible from 100 feet versus 200 feet. So in the interest of time, is there any material change to your application you could present that would alter our position on maintaining historical standards?
actually, I would like to speak, since Mr. Gurr referred to the guidelines. I'd like to discuss the guidelines further. And you're spending my money, so I'd like to spend 5 minutes of your time, if I may. Discussing guidelines. Is that okay?
Yeah, continue.
Okay. So these guidelines are based on the standards as detailed in the Code of Federal Relations, as well as the Antietam Code of Maryland. Here you'll find the enabling legislation that allows historic district commissions to exist, and details of the specific criteria that are not fully discussed in the guidelines that I pulled offline from the city of Hagerstown. If this is the only resource you've referred to, you've missed the very foundation upon which these guidelines are based. Under these standards, there are specific sets of standards for different actions, such as preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, or reconstruction. A specific set of standards applies to each of these actions. Likewise, there's a specific set of standards for new construction. It is the new construction standards that apply to this project. In my letter dated February 23, I specifically cited this project's consistency with relevant Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties under Title 36 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Because this commission does not appear to have considered all of these factors, I will reiterate how this project is in fact consistent with the standards for new construction. The project was designed with respect to the cultural landscape and significant character defining features. We chose a design that will complement the historic property and the surrounding uses. Historic character defining features are not obscured, damaged, destroyed, or otherwise negatively impacted. The proposed garage will be located on a non-character defining elevation and a significant distance away from any historic home or other historic element. The proposed garage site is located in the rear yard on an elevation that is more than 20 feet below and a distance of at least 100 feet away from any historic home or element. Now, Mr. Bachmiller corrected me on that. I was looking at the distance from the street. From South Prospect, it is nearly 200 feet. It's not quite, and that's okay, but it's still a significant difference. The size and scale of the project is limited in relationship to the historic building. The proposed single-story garage would be approximately 832 square feet, which is indeed nominal in relation to the four-story, nearly 8,000 square feet home that's sitting atop the hill. The proposed garage comprises approximately a tenth of the area of the historic structure. The related new construction will be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, The essential form and integrity of the historic property would be unimpaired. The proposed construction would provide a current day requisite feature, thus assure continued use. The proposed construction would be subordinate to the historic building. Based on the size, scale, and elevation, it is clear that the proposed structure would be a subordinate element. The proposed construction would be compatible, yet differentiated enough so that it is not confused as historic or original to the historic building. We have selected a compatible design that would not be confused as a historic feature, as required under the specific regulations for new construction. Additionally, yes, more. The proposed construction does not in any way change the defining characteristics of the building, site, or environment. The defining characteristics will remain intact. The historic character of the property will be retained and preserved. Changes that create a false sense of historical development shall not be undertaken. Distinctive features that characterize the property shall be preserved. New construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and compatible with the massing, size, scale, and features to protect the historic integrity of the property. New construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historic property and its environment would be unimpaired. Now let's look at the Maryland Historical Trust Act of 1985 as amended.
Excuse me for just a moment. Are you reading the entire code to us?
I am not reading the entire code to you.
Okay.
I am highlighting the portions of the code that are relevant to new construction.
Okay.
For your information, as well as the information of my fellow historic district residents.
But why are you reading it to us?
Because it's relevant. I'm not reading the code. I am citing portions as it relates to this project, and it's not all cited. Most of it is how we're doing it in relation to that, because it matters, because these are items that need to be considered. Mr. Bachmiller has his hand up.
Staff would just like to point out to the commission, and I'm not casting aspersions on this, the applicant has every right to do exactly what she's doing. She works in some sort of inspection enforcement field. It seems pretty clear to me that she is doing everything she can to establish a record for appeal to court. And I just want folks to be aware of that. And my observation on that, I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like to me, being 30 years in this field. And I also want to be very clear that she has every right to be doing that. Okay, so we're clear.
Yes, thank you. I was just clarifying what her intent was. It sounded the same to me.
When we start getting into quoting chapter and verse of the state code at this point, we're creating a legal record at this point, I think. So, but I just also want to be very clear. She has every right to be doing so.
That's fine.
And this is Doug, and I agree with Ms. Allen. So I'm listening. I'm hearing style, design, features. All of those were acceptable to the previous meeting, as I appreciate it. It was just the material of the vinyl siding. So, ma'am, if that's your intent, create a record, then I'm fine with that. But I'm not hearing anything that suggests that vinyl siding would be acceptable. So I just want to take that for the record as well.
Thank you for your opinion. I'd like to continue. My point here is that I want you to act under the basis of the law, not your opinion. So let me finish and then we can proceed from there. So under the National Historic Preservation Act, which is jointly administered by the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office. Under this act, design review must be conducted according to the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic property. The criteria upon which proposals for alteration, relocation, new construction, and demolition will be reviewed must be clearly set forth and should coincide at minimum with the language of the criteria clause of the article. And yes, Mr. Barthmiller is correct. I have been verifying such compliance in my professional career for more than 25 years. I have cited legal basis in support for this application. Thus far, not one person on this commission has explained exactly how this proposed construction would negatively impact the district or the existing historic elements of the property. Because a portion of the siding would be visible does not make it in any way detrimental to the character of the historic home or surrounding streetscape. Particularly when so much of the same already exists on the nearest neighboring structures and throughout the district. Because you prefer to see a different material does not make the requested material less appropriate. I did point to specific locations within the district that have existing vinyl or aluminum siding. If you visit other historic districts within the city, you will find more of the same. At last meeting, only one member acknowledged this fact. Our home is a contributing resource to the district as much as any other home on the block, including those that feature siding. We have one set of standards for the districts. Therefore, all homes in the district should be held under the same standard while receiving the same considerations, privileges, and allowances. We are asking for use of the same material that currently exists within the district on our property and literally 8 feet from our property line. 2 weeks ago, you stated that you do not set a precedent, but the fact is that this body does establish precedent. And it is important that you consider all factors under the law before making a determination. Shortly after your comment regarding such precedent, you asked if I thought it would be okay that you deny another application and approve mine. The answer is yes, if it's appropriate. As I have detailed, the standards set forth by the Secretary of the Interior do support the appropriateness of this request. While the Commission has only expressed the preference and opinions of its members. Last meeting, you made reference to the recently restored building across the street at 140 West Antietam. This property features 8 HVAC units in direct view from the dry bridge with no screening. This is also the view from our patio. There are 3 additional units wall mounted to the other side of the building, also within viewshed of the dry bridge, as well as our historic home. Last meeting, you suggested planting screening to conceal the new construction. The garage foundation is located approximately 10 feet from the inside of the existing wall, allowing for full visibility of the wall and the home in its entirety. The screening you proposed would in fact diminish the view of the home from the rear. I asked you to explain exactly how our proposed wood grain textured product is not appropriate while you are asking us to use another wood grain textured product. No one can answer that. Tell me exactly how the proposed construction would negatively impact the historic features that remain intact and entirely unobstructed. Your duty to this community requires you to be specific. We are asking you to respond to our application, not in accordance with your personal preference, but in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards under the Code of Federal Regulations and the Annotated Code of Maryland. If you cannot specifically cite enabling legislation in support of your opinion, your conclusions are arbitrary, and this is not acceptable. I've cited specifically how this project has been located and designed in substantial accordance with these standards, and we would appreciate your thoughtful consideration and approval of this request. Thank you.
I have a question. What was the reference to 140 Antietam that you were making? What was the point of that reference?
I believe it was Ms. Calhoun that referenced the property across the street that was recently restored.
No, you were just mentioned it in your monologue. What were you saying about it?
What I was saying is that it was referenced as an example at the last meeting as a recently restored property. And what I was saying is that if you're looking from South Prospect or from the Dry Bridge, you will see 8 HVAC units on that side of the building that are clearly visible and unscreened. And if you're coming up Antietam, within the view shed of the Dry Bridge, you will see that building with an additional 3 units wall mounted to the building. It's also not screened. So that is in the view shed of not only the Dry Bridge, but my historic property. So my question is, how is that okay? And 3 to 4 feet of siding visible is not.
We probably have to look at that case again and find out the details of it. I don't know. But, but each case stands on its own merit as well. So I don't know what that was.
What I'd like to understand is how it is that you can expect to make a reasonable determination about any of these properties, not just mine, when you have not visited the site, you do not understand the area, you do not understand the landscape.
You're making an assumption there.
Well, I understand that 2 people from this committee have been there since our last meeting, and one of them explained that he was already familiar when we met last time.
Yes.
And someone else was asking where the access was. Based on the questions, it is clear that this committee is not familiar with this property and the surrounding landscape. And it's a good idea to go out and look at these properties before you make determinations, because you will make better decisions. That's all I'm saying.
Chairman, could staff ask a few questions?
Certainly.
Ms. Allen, how many years have you lived in Hagerstown?
About 8.
And in those 8 years, how many times have you been on West Antietam Street going under the Dry Bridge?
Many, many times.
Would you say scores or hundreds?
I would say a couple of 100 times.
Okay.
And that's why she didn't know where the access was.
That was, no, that's not what I believe, if I recall, the prior question was the location of the entry that you were proposing to use for a garage, because there was an entry on Antietam, but you explained that the entry was to be done from the alley. That was just a clarification point.
The entry is existing. If you were familiar with the property, you would know that.
No, in your diagram, I specifically asked you about the entrance onto the property, and you said that it was to be coming through the alley, not Antietam.
I would agree with Ms. Allen, because when I was looking at the plans that were submitted, it was not clear where the front of the garage was and how you access that coming into that property.
And we had a
So,
long
I mean,
discussion about
even
that.
on Google, the image on Google shows the brick wall extending the whole way down across there as well. In reality, it's not. On the satellite vision or view of Google, it's clearly not there, that you're coming in from the middle. So we were just, making sure that the information that was submitted to us clearly indicated what was actually going to occur.
Now, if staff could.
Sure, the access was included on the drawing. You can see the big hole, the big opening in the wall. No, there wasn't a question. They were just justifying.
Mr. Chairman, if you would like, staff could point out a few things in response, because the members of the commission don't deal with the design guidelines on a daily basis. But I'd like to offer some material for the reference or for the record that could help the discussion. The design guidelines that are adopted by this body, all historic districts have design guidelines. And the reason for that is, well, I wouldn't say all, because maybe there's somebody out there that doesn't. But a lot, if not most, do have design guidelines. And that's because the Code of Federal Regulations are enabling legislation. They create the authority and the state enabling authority within the zoning code to create these districts. But the thing is that each district has its own unique type, style and character. So you can't have the state level or the federal regulations being the be all and end all, essentially, for dealing with local specific unique sets of circumstances. So that's why design guidelines are created. Now, this historic district is subject to the architectural design guidelines for the residential preservation design districts for Hagerstown. We have two sets of design guidelines, one for the downtown district, which has a particular commercial / mixed use character to it. And then we have another set of guidelines for the three predominantly residential districts. Under new construction materials in the residential guidelines, it says the proper use of materials is an important method for controlling the appearance of the historic district. Therefore, keep in mind the following. And one of the bullet points is use new materials such as plastic only if they can be properly shielded from public view or assimilated with current materials. So that's one item. That's under materials under new construction. And then I'll move on to outbuildings and other appurtenances. Often property owners request outbuildings or other appurtenances for their historic property. Appurtenances are permanent or semi-permanent fixtures, structures, or details added to the property. These have large impact on the appearance of the streetscape from public ways. Now keep in mind, this is not a house that's sitting in the middle of the block somewhere where you can't see the backyard. The most common requests for outbuildings such as garages and sheds. However, other appurtenances include, it talks about pools and gazebos and stuff. When considering an outbuilding or appurtenance visible from a public way, keep the following guidelines in mind. 1, style, scale, color, materials, and textures should be compatible with those of the building, being the principal building. Avoid appurtenances that clash with the architectural period of the building and the streetscape. Appurtenances should not draw attention away from the historic building. Then it talks about statuary and stuff, which doesn't apply here. Do not mimic an architectural style not found in your residential district. And then it also talks about metal garden sheds are not compatible with the historic character of the district and are not recommended. So we have those criteria when talking about sheds. Under new construction, siding. When considering siding for your new structure, use the following recommendations to help create a sense of consistency between old buildings along the street and the new structure. Beveled siding and German drop siding are common traditional materials that have use as a contemporary material. Bullet item 2, type of siding used is dependent upon what is the most appropriate for each building. Third, window trim, door trim, and corner boards should be included. And then last, the commission will consider siding made of modern materials for new construction and or additions, depending upon the location of the construction on the building and the surroundings of that building. Environmental settings may also be considered. Window, door, corner trim boards, and siding must not cover up cornices or eave details on historic resources. That last one kind of implies additions to existing buildings. The standard that this board has historically used is how visible is it from a public way? This garage is about 10 feet from the sidewalk of Antietam Street. As Mr. Gear has mentioned in the past, if this was a mid-block property and you really can't see the backyard from streets, you probably had your vinyl siding at the last meeting. But staff wants to point out that there are specific guidelines within these design guidelines that specifically address building new buildings that are visible this close to a public street and the materials that should be used on them. And I just entered that into the record. I'm not going to make any commentary one way or the other. I'm just entering it into the record.
Yeah, you already have. So the point is, if you feel that the wood grain textured vinyl siding is not appropriate, but the wood grain textured other siding is, tell me specifically how exactly this use will negatively impact the historic nature of the home or the existing wall, that you can see all of the historic elements. They're all visible, they're all unobstructed, they're all undamaged, they're all being preserved. And we set it back 10 feet from the inside of the wall so we don't obscure the view of it. So tell me exactly how this negatively impacts the character, particularly when we have other homes, which I noted 2 weeks ago, that have vinyl and other siding, whether you approved it or not, attached to the old buildings that have not negatively impaired the character of the neighborhood. It doesn't make sense. So I just want you to explain that. That's all.
This is Doug. I just want to say, for this whole hour, I've actually heard nothing that is certainly material that alters my position, that I don't think that vinyl siding is appropriate for a building that's that visible. I've been consistent in my time on this commission, and I plan to be consistent in the future. So I don't know, we could talk for another hour, and I've heard nothing to alter my position.
Okay, Mr. Carroll, if your position is firm, then tell me specifically why that is your position. Tell me specifically why, how it has an adverse effect. Tell me. That's what I want to hear from you.
You don't have, I'm not here for you to hear from me. Mr. Bachmiller went over well.
I'm asking you to specifically tell me how it presents an adverse effect. That's all I'm asking you for, Mr. Carroll. You're welcome to your opinion. And if that's what you decide, that's what we'll do. But I want to understand why. How do you feel that it would present an adverse effect?
If I could, I just said it. Mr. Bachmiller went over it well. He read it word for word. You're asking to put a material that has not been acceptable. It's vinyl siding. We've not approved that. We had another case earlier today where we didn't approve a vinyl railing. So we've been consistent on that. It's
Okay.
consistent with
In relation to its location on the property, as Mr. Bachmiller said, and the surrounding uses, tell me how specifically this would present an adverse effect.
You're asking us to approve a material that is not historic and not historic in appearance, and that we have been consistently not approving. If we
Okay.
approve this, we have no.
All right, so last week you said that you don't establish a precedent, but now you want to maintain your precedent. Is that what you're telling me?
We didn't say that at all. We did
No,
not say that at all.
That is what you said.
I've been consistent.
Because you didn't approve somebody else's doesn't make mine less appropriate.
What you're asking us to do is apply the rules and the standards collectively, and we can't do that. We
I'm
cannot do that.
asking you to apply the rules and the standards regarding a new construction that's at least 100 feet away from the existing historic structure and that does not obscure any part of the historic elements. The standards specifically state that the new construction should complement but be differentiated from. There is no way that this is being diminished. And if that garage burns down in a week, the property would look the same as it does today.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't see this going anywhere. Ma'am, you've read for the record what you wanted. Mr. Bachmiller stated for the record what the standards were.
I stated what the standards were.
I'm prepared to vote on this because I don't see that engaging in this dialogue is having any impact whatsoever.
All right.
I think in Robert's rules, we have something where you can limit discussion by calling for the question. Therefore, I am calling for the question.
All
To
right.
vote on yay or nay.
Yay or nay what?
Consideration of the application as presented to us at this point in
Correct.
time. At this point, want to obtain a motion in regards to the application.
Just so we're clear, we're talking about the request for the amended application. That could go in two directions procedurally. One would be to approve it or to deny it. But if you deny it, what staff would recommend is that you make it clear in your motion that it does not affect the approval as it currently stands for the previously approved version. So they could still go forward with that one if they chose to. But if you're going to deny it, be clear that what you're denying is the requested amendment.
Commission members? Anybody?
I'm confused.
We need to make a motion in regards to the application. At this point, you can either motion to accept the application as it stands, or you can make a motion to deny the application. Denying the application as it stands right now would say that the vinyl siding is not acceptable material to be clad on the garage.
And that the prior application could proceed as previously approved.
So
Correct.
this would be, this would be denying the second request, which is specific to vinyl siding, right?
That's correct.
Correct.
Am I understanding that? But the first application we approved that included an alternate material at the party board, that would still be in place so that Ms. Tollett can move forward. Am I
It would be
correct
staff's
in that?
recommendation to you to make that part of the motion to make it clear.
Are you ready to make the motion or make a motion?
I'm willing to try.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the materials submitted in case number, I believe it's HDC 2020-11, and its associated staff report and recommendations, and I have viewed the property in question. The staff report recommends denial of this application as consistent with the applicable standards adopted by this commission. And no one has appeared at this hearing other than the principals with concerns about, issues with, or objections to this application. Therefore, I move that this commission adopt the staff evaluation and recommendations in this case and not grant a certificate of appropriateness to the applicant for case number HDC 2020-11. I think that's correct.
I have to point out that I believe the word consistent with the design guidelines was used. It should be inconsistent with the design guidelines.
Inconsistent. That's fine. Friendly amendment accepted.
All right, is there a second to the motion?
Doug, I second that.
All right, any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to qualify this, please, to the motion that the prior application of this case number will stand for the use of that alternative material. So that the applying applicant can proceed.
That would be my understanding. You okay? Mr. Powell, you okay with that amendment?
That friendly amendment is also accepted.
Second.
Ms. Carroll, good with the amendment for the second? All right. At this point, no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify saying aye or nay accordingly. We'll start roll call. Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Ms. Allen?
Didn't hear anything, Leslie.
She's muted.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. George?
Aye.
Mr. Powell?
Nay.
Okay, we have a 3-1 vote as a approval of the denial of the application. Did I understand that correctly, Mr. Powell, that you were voting against the motion?
Correct.
Okay.
And just so we're clear on the motion, you, by voting against the motion, you're in favor of the vinyl, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, you didn't vote.
I would vote yay to the proposal of denial.
Wow. I'll be following you.
All right. At this time, we're sorry to inform you that the application as it stands, the resubmitted application or the amended application has been denied. Do appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. I look forward to painting it.
Great.
Good night.
This time, we have other, let me get back to my agenda. Any other workshops or any workshops? I don't think we have anything scheduled. Any new business? Do we want to table that until the next meeting?
You can do that. Preservation month is May. You have 2 meetings in April. So you have time if that's what you want to do.
Move to table the preservation award discussion.
Second?
Second that.
All right. Any further discussion?
Who seconded that? Was that
Doug?
Chris?
Doug.
It was Doug.
Doug.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Leslie?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
You might want to think about it though, between the now and the next meeting. If anything jumps out at you, that might be award worthy.
Okay. Any other new business needs to be brought before the commission?
We have a site plan.
May I make a comment? Oh, go ahead.
We have a site plan that's currently pending for the Hatters Plaza, the former Updegraft building site on West Washington Street. I'm looking to bring that to you at the next meeting.
All right, thank you. All right, any other new business?
No.
Any old business? Any announcements? Hearing no announcements, motion to adjourn.
Did you say you had something?
Say again, Steve?
Did Bob said, because I kind of cut Bob off. Did you have something that you wanted to?
Just a point that unless I am mistaken, on HDC 2020-29 and HDC 2020-34, we did approve vinyl siding. Just something for you to think about, unless they were changed and I was not made aware of it.
What properties were they?
One was the garage up here at 1003, the terrace,
Mm-hmm.
and one was the addition at 941 Forest Drive.
And I do believe the rationale for that was those particular applications was not visible from the public way.
Were very minimally visible from a public way, very set back.
Just bringing it up.
I mean, that's a good point, and I would suggest if you have a situation like that in the future, bring it up during the actual deliberations.
All right, any further, any other announcements, comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I know it's been a long meeting. Appreciate everybody's time. All right, we got a motion. Who's second?
Second it, Doug.
Right. So be it. Appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, and all have a good evening.
Next meeting is in person.
Next meeting is in person, folks.
All right. So they go better than expected.
Yeah, I mean, we are still on live. Let's not be live. Tell you what, Mike, how's about you and I have a conversation tomorrow?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.